After a year of negotiations, we now have a Hirst fix, which covers the majority of the state when it comes to water rights. However, the Hirst solution did not address the Skagit River basin, which covers nearly half of your district. Can you tell us why?
Well, first of all, it was very frustrating. Let's back up a little bit, though. Hirst, under the Hirst decision, it meant anybody who had a well in Washington state was going to have zero water. And so while this case, the Hirst case, may have been started up in the northeast corner of the state, it really had a tremendous negative effect on the entire state. And so while, yes, the Skagit Basin we were not able to get to as far as this go around, we did make some good headway in the rest of the state. But very, very, very disappointed, to say the least, in the fact that we were basically stonewalled by the Democrats and a tribe on being able to get water pouring again in the Skagit, which coincidentally, for those of you who don't know, if you're in especially the eastern part, the eastern half of the Skagit Valley Basin, you're averaging over 50 inches of rain a year. So it's not as if there's a water shortage. This was just complete politics.
So why? What's the reason for the problem up in the Skagit River Basin?
You know, typically when I do these interviews, I don't like to get too political. And I think after my 16 years down here, I've got a pretty good track record of doing that. But I'm throwing that out the window in this one. This one was all about politics. There is no reason with the amount of water we have available in the Skagit Basin why we should not have been able to include the Skagit Basin, which are WIRAs 3 and 4, in the Hirst fix. To me, it was all about politics. It was about one party, the majority party down here, placating to one group, in this case, the local tribe up there. And I don't have a lot of patience for that kind of thing. And why in the world would we, as sworn to uphold the Constitution legislators, our title is state representative, for Pete's sake, state representative, not just district representative, it's state senator. The decisions we make on a daily basis, yes, they are affecting our local communities, but ultimately those decisions we're making are affecting the entire state. And to have so little regard for a population within our state that has so much water, okay? It's not like we're talking about the deserts of, eastern Washington. We're talking about one of the greenest, wettest places in the state of Washington being restricted from access to water. It makes no sense to me. And so it was all about politics. I wish it wasn't that way. We're not done yet. We've got some other opportunities, that we are working on down here, but it's very unfortunate that we could not fix that with the rest of the state.
There is legislation out there that has been introduced to try to address some of these issues, especially with the Skagit River Basin. So tell us about that and where that legislation is.
The bill we're talking about is House Bill 2937, if I'm not mistaken. The same folks that actually helped us put together the final negotiators on Hirst were the ones that have been working together on this piece of legislation. It is specifically focused at the Skagit Valley Basin. It does not go as far as the Hirst fix went for the rest of the state. But what it does do for us, if we could pass this piece of legislation, is it forces us to deal with the problem now. It forces us to tap into, with the Department of Ecology, these resources that are already available to people. But what we're running into, again, is pure politics. The feedback that I've heard and my colleagues have heard is that they don't want to have another water conversation in the Democrat caucuses. And that's where the problem lies. It's sad that we've got a majority party down here that is just not, they're going to put a blind eye to one part of the state for political purposes only. And I'm hopeful that we can come up with some kind of at least small solution to get things going again, at least even if it's just temporarily, a pilot project, something. But to take, as I think one of our county commissioners up in Skagit County said, I believe it was Ron Wiesen, said that we're looking at first of all, it's millions of dollars in lost revenue because of the depleting assessed value of these properties. And stop and think about this for a second. Why would you buy a piece of property? Most people buy pieces of property so that they might be able to put a dwelling on it someday. Most do. If you don't have water, you can't put a dwelling on it. And if you don't have water, that means that the value of your property plummets dramatically. And in this county, what we're seeing is approximately 70% reductions in the assessed value of the property. What does that mean to Skagit County? It's about a $22 million cut in the local taxes. Well, people will say, well, that's great. Well, hold on a second. What about the people who have invested all their livelihood, their savings, their retirement? This is their starter home, their retirement home. It's where they want the family to be, and now they can't build there. What do they do with that property? It's almost unsellable. Number two, do you really think that the county is going to be able to operate with $22 million less dollars? No. What they're going to need to do then is reassess the properties around those undevelopable properties that can be or are developed, and it's called a tax shift. In other words, okay, the people who couldn't develop, yeah, you're out of luck. You can't develop your property anymore. But the double whammy is the people who have been able to develop or can, they're going to get hit with a much higher tax price tag than they're currently paying right now. And so that's the other consequence of this whole thing that has not really been talked about. But even our own county commissioner has acknowledged this. And as I talked to before we fixed the whole Hirst thing, I talked to county commissioners and councilmen from all over the state of Washington. They all were scared to death that we were not going to fix this because that's part of the reality. It's a consequence of this whole thing that many people just never thought about.
It's got a sting probably for those folks that are in the Skagit River basin to see that there is a Hirst fix, but they don't get any relief out of it.
Absolutely. And, in our district, a little less than half of our district is Skagit County when it comes to water and geographic location. Snohomish County is the larger portion of our district. That's where most of our citizens reside, is in East Snohomish County. We were able to fix the Snohomish County portion of it. So a little better than half our district got water again. As far as the three of us legislators, we had to make a tough decision on this. I kind of likened it to this. I was in a conversation with somebody just recently in our district about this, and I said, here's what I was faced with. I knew 100 people were going to die, and I had a chance to save 95 of them. Would I? And the person over the phone said to me, well, yeah. And I said, here's my problem. The 5 I couldn't save were in my own district, the Skagit. Yes, we were able to save 95 of the 100. But that 5, the folks that are feeling the pain of it still are those folks in the Skagit. And we're going to keep working on that. While I did vote yes on this, because as a leader down here, one of 5 between the House, the Senate, and the governor, to get this thing through to be 95% successful, it took my vote to do that. But my colleagues, Carolyn Eslick, Senator Keith Wagoner, they both voted no. And I encourage them to vote no on this, because it's a very difficult thing for us to be able to go home with a smile on our face saying we solved it, like almost every other legislator in the state was able to do, by the way. But in our district, it kind of split us almost down the middle between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to being able to develop your own property. And are we done? Absolutely not. We're still fighting this thing tooth and nail. My hope is, from listeners back home, I want you to contact me, but it would be really helpful too if you could contact especially Democrats and the governor and say, this is not fair. Democrats coined the phrase several years ago, one Washington. And it was interesting, that phrase came from a gentleman by the name of Bill Grant. He was a state representative from the Walla Walla area, a farmer, Democrat, Eastern Washington. And he coined that phrase because he felt it was important enough that Seattle and the more rural areas, that the entire state would be thinking about each other and the policy decisions we make. That did not happen in this bill that fixed Hirst. Yes, it took care of 95% of the problem, but we have a glaring problem still. And my hope would be that legislators from around the state would come side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and work together to fix this. And my hope is we'll be successful in doing that before we get out of here. Call the 1-800 number. I'm going to get your messages, but you can also specifically ask to talk to other legislators in other districts. One of the districts you should be talking to is the west end of Skagit County, the 40th legislative district. It would be very helpful if we could get those folks supporting their own constituents, frankly, on this particular issue. It's a big issue, and frankly, in my opinion, this is a property rights issue, which is a constitutional, foundational principle that we should be following. And my hope is we'll be successful, but we need your help.